Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSV Liberty, staring at the view screen that showed empty space ahead. His ship was 3 months into a deep space mission, looking for new worlds and hopefully new friends among the stars. The Liberty was humanity's pride, built for peaceful exploration and first contact with alien species. "Captain, we're picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Amy Carter from her communications station. Her voice carried excitement mixed with nervousness. Multiple ships, unknown design, about to light hours ahead. Jake felt his heart race. After decades of searching, humanity might finally meet another intelligent species. He turned to his science officer, Dr. Lisa Harper, who was already running scans from her station. "What do you see, Lisa?" Jake asked. Dr. Harper frowned at her readings. 12 large vessels in formation. Their technology is definitely more advanced than ours. Energy signatures are off the charts. "Captain, these ships are heavily armed." Commander Ryan Blake, the ship's security chief, stepped closer to Jake. "Sir, I recommend caution. That's a military formation if I ever saw one." Jake nodded but felt hopeful. "Maybe they're just careful about meeting strangers." "I would be too if I were them, Amy. Open all communication channels. Send our standard first contact message." Amy's fingers danced over her controls. "Broadcasting now. Captain, universal peace symbols, mathematical sequences, and our basic language primer." The bridge fell silent as they waited. Everyone knew this moment would change human history forever. Jake watched the stars and thought about all the preparation that had led to this point. Humanity had dreamed of this day for centuries. "Captain," Amy said suddenly, "we're getting a response." "On screen," Jake ordered. The view screen flickered and showed an alien face. That made several crew members gasp. The creature had gray-green skin stretched tight over sharp bone ridges. Its eyes were completely black, and when it opened its mouth, rows of pointed teeth were visible. The alien wore what looked like military armor covered in strange symbols. "I am War Commander Zefkara of the Vorthic Dominion," the alien said in perfect English. "You will surrender your vessel immediately." Jake stepped forward, keeping his voice calm and friendly. "Greetings, War Commander. I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Colonial Fleet. We come in peace, hoping to establish friendly relations between our peoples." Zefkara's black eyes seemed to study Jake with cold intelligence. "Humans, another weak species trying to deceive us with talk of peace. Your ship's weapons and shields prove you are warriors pretending to be harmless. We carry defensive systems only," Jake explained. "Standard protection for deep space travel. We have no hostile intentions toward you or your people." "Lies," Zefkara snarled. "All species lie about their true nature until they are strong enough to attack. The Vorthic have conquered 47 worlds. We know the patterns of deception." Dr. Harper quickly moved to Jake's side. "Captain, their weapons are powering up. All 12 ships are targeting us." Jake felt sweat on his forehead but kept his voice steady. "War Commander, please reconsider. We can offer you knowledge, trade, cultural exchange. There's no need for violence between our peoples." "Your weakness disgusts me," Zefkara replied. "Species that speak of peace are either fools or liars. The Vorthic eliminate both." He turned away from the screen and barked orders in his alien language. "Shields up," Jake shouted. "All hands to battle stations." The Liberty shook violently as energy beams struck her hull. The lights flickered, and warning alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Commander Blake was already at his station, trying to coordinate their defenses. "Return fire," Jake ordered, though his heart broke at the command. Humanity's first meeting with aliens had become a battle. The Liberty's weapons struck the nearest Vorthic ship, but the alien vessel barely seemed damaged. Dr. Harper called out readings that made Jake's blood run cold. "Captain, their shields are 5 times stronger than ours. Our weapons are barely scratching them. We're outnumbered and outgunned." Another blast rocked the ship. This time, sparks flew from control panels, and Jake heard the awful sound of hull plating being torn apart. Somewhere below, "Sir," Amy called out desperately, "I'm picking up distress signals from our escape pods. Some crew members are abandoning ship in the lower sections." Jake's mind raced. The Liberty couldn't win this fight, but maybe some of his people could. Survive. All non-essential personnel to escape pods. We're getting out of here, Captain. Commander Blake said grimly. 3 of our pods have been captured by tractor beams. The aliens are taking prisoners. Jake watched helplessly as Vorthok ships pulled the small escape pods into their cargo bays. Among those captured was Lieutenant Amy Carter, who had been helping evacuate the lower decks. Her pod disappeared into the belly of the alien flagship. Can we rescue them? Jake asked. Negative, sir, Blake replied. We'd be destroyed before we got close. The Liberty shuddered under another barrage. Dr. Harper's voice was urgent. Captain, hull breach on Deck 7. Life support is failing in multiple sections. We have maybe 10 minutes before total systems failure. Jake made the hardest decision of his life. Set course for human space, maximum speed. We have to warn Earth about what's coming. As the Liberty limped away from the battle, Jake stared at the alien ships growing smaller on the view screen. 13 of his crew members were now prisoners of a species that seemed to view kindness as weakness and peace as deception. Amy, he whispered, thinking of his communications officer. She had been so excited about making first contact. Now she was in the hands of creatures who had called humans weak and disgusting. Dr. Harper worked frantically at her station, trying to keep the ship together long enough to reach human space. Jake, I'm picking up their transmissions. They're not just talking about us. There are references to dozens of other species, other conquered worlds. Are you saying they're an empire? Jake asked. A military empire that destroys or enslaves everyone they meet, she confirmed. And based on their formation and the way they talked, I think we just became their next target. Commander Blake looked up from his damage reports. Captain, with respect, I think they let us go. They could have destroyed us easily, but they didn't. Why would they do that? Jake felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the truth. They want us to run home and tell everyone what happened. They want humanity to be afraid before they arrive. The Liberty continued its desperate flight toward Earth, carrying the news that would change human civilization forever. Behind them, the Vorthok fleet began moving in the same direction, following the human ship's course back to its home system. Humanity's first contact with alien life had become a nightmare, and War Commander Zeth Kara was already planning something far worse than simple conquest. He had seen something in human technology and behavior that convinced him these weak creatures could become dangerous if left alive. The Vorthok had decided that humanity needed to be made an example that would terrify the entire galaxy. The emergency meeting on Earth began before Captain Jake Morrison's ship had even finished docking. Admiral Patricia Wells sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by humanity's top military leaders and government officials. President Daniel Foster's face appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from his secure bunker beneath the Capitol. Captain Morrison, Admiral Wells said as Jake entered the room, still wearing his torn uniform from the battle. Tell us everything. Jake's voice was hoarse from exhaustion and grief. They call themselves the Vorthok Dominion, military empire. They've conquered 47 worlds according to their leader. They see peaceful contact as either weakness or deception. And our people, President Foster asked from the screen. 13 crew members captured, including Lieutenant Amy Carter. The aliens took them as prisoners. Jake's hands shook as he remembered watching the escape pods disappear into enemy ships. General Kevin Rodriguez leaned forward. What are their capabilities? Far beyond ours. Jake admitted, their ships have shields 5 times stronger than anything we have. Their weapons cut through our hull like paper. 12 ships destroyed our defensive positions without taking serious damage. The room fell silent. Humanity had always known they might encounter hostile aliens, but they had hoped for the best. Now their worst fears were coming true. How long do we have? Admiral Wells asked. Dr. Helen Brooks, Earth's leading xenobiology expert, spoke up from her seat. Based on the Liberty's flight path and estimated alien speed, maybe 6 months if they come directly. But sir, we need to consider something else. What? President Foster demanded. They let Captain Morrison escape, Dr. Brooks said. A species that advanced could have destroyed or captured the Liberty easily. They wanted us to know they were coming. Meanwhile, millions of miles away in deep space, Lieutenant Amy Carter woke up in a metal cage barely large enough for her to stand. The air smelled of decay and chemicals that burned her nose. Strange lights flickered overhead, casting weird shadows on the walls. Amy looked around and saw other cages filled with creatures she had never seen before. Some looked almost human, while others were completely alien. All of them looked terrified and weak, like they had been imprisoned for a long time. "You are awake," said a voice in broken English. Amy turned to see a creature with blue fur and large eyes in the cage next to hers. "I am Keth. I have learned your language from listening to the guards talk about you humans." "How long have you been here?" Amy whispered. "3 cycles of the large light," Keth replied, pointing at a bright panel on the ceiling. "My world was destroyed by the Vorthok 2 cycles ago. They kept some of us alive for their experiments." Amy felt sick. "Experiments?" Before Keth could answer, heavy footsteps echoed through the prison area. 2 Vorthok guards appeared, their black eyes scanning the cages. They stopped in front of Amy's cell and opened it with a device that made the metal bars slide away. "Come," one guard said in harsh English. "The flesh studiers want to examine you." Amy was dragged through corridors filled with screaming sounds that came from behind closed doors. She saw rooms full of strange machines and tables where other prisoners were being subjected to horrible procedures. The Vorthok were studying different species, like they were insects in a laboratory. In one room, Amy saw a creature that looked like a giant lizard strapped to a metal table, while Vorthok scientists cut into its skin and attached wires to its organs. The creature was still alive and conscious, its eyes wide with pain and terror. "Do not look," whispered the guard almost kindly. "It will be your turn soon enough." Back on Earth, the government was mobilizing every resource humanity had. President Foster addressed the world in a broadcast that reached every human colony and space station. "My fellow humans," he said, his face grave but determined, "we face the greatest threat in our species' history. An alien empire that destroys worlds and enslaves survivors is coming for us. But we will not surrender. We will fight for our freedom, our families, and our future." Dr. Helen Brooks worked day and night in her laboratory, studying every piece of data from the Liberty's encounter. She analyzed energy readings, weapon signatures, and communication patterns, looking for any weakness in Vorthok technology. "Their ships use a centralized control system," she explained to Admiral Wells during a late-night briefing. "Everything connects to a main computer. If we could disrupt that somehow." "Keep working on it," Wells ordered. "We need every advantage we can get." General Rodriguez was dealing with an even bigger problem. Humanity's fleet was designed for exploration and defense against pirates, not war against a superior alien empire. Most human ships carried light weapons and basic shields. "We have maybe 100 combat-capable vessels," he reported to the War Council. "The aliens destroyed one of our best ships. With 12 vessels, even if we gathered every armed ship in human space, we'd be outnumbered and outgunned. Then we build more ships." President Foster declared, "Convert every shipyard, every factory. Put every human to work preparing for war." In the alien prison, Amy was returned to her cage after hours of painful testing. The Vorthok had taken blood samples, scanned her brain, and subjected her to various torture devices while recording her reactions. She could barely move from the pain. "They study how we think and feel," Keth explained quietly. "They want to know what makes each species afraid, what makes us weak. Then they use that knowledge to break us completely." Amy looked around at the other prisoners. Some had been there so long they no longer seemed aware of their surroundings. Others rocked back and forth, muttering in languages she didn't understand. "Why don't they just kill us?" she asked. "Because fear is a weapon," Keth replied. "They broadcast recordings of their experiments to worlds they plan to attack. When a species sees what the Vorthok do to prisoners, many surrender without fighting." That night, Amy heard War Commander Zefkara speaking to his officers in the corridor outside the prison. She pressed against the bars to listen, using the translation device they had forced her to wear during the experiments. "The humans show interesting responses to pain," Zefkara was saying. Their emotional attachment to other individuals is stronger than most species. This makes them excellent subjects for fear-based warfare. What are your orders, War Commander? Asked another Vorthok voice. Prepare the genocide fleet, Zefkara replied coldly. We will not simply conquer the humans. We will exterminate them completely and broadcast every moment to the galaxy. When other species see what happens to those who resist the Vorthok, they will surrender before we even arrive at their worlds. Amy felt her blood turn to ice. The aliens weren't just planning to defeat humanity. They wanted to murder every human being in existence and use their deaths to terrorize other species into submission. She had to find a way to warn Earth, but she was trapped in a cage millions of miles from home, surrounded by creatures who saw her as nothing more than a test subject for their experiments in fear and pain. The Vorthok fleet began moving toward human space, carrying weapons designed not for conquest, but for complete annihilation. War Commander Zefkara had decided that humanity would serve as the perfect example of what happened to species that dared to resist the Vorthok dominion. Behind them, in the prison ship's holding area, Amy Carter began planning something that the Vorthok had never encountered before: a human being who refused to break, no matter what they did to her. The first human colony to die was New Austin. The planet had 3 million people living in peaceful farming communities and research stations. They never had a chance to fight back. Captain Jake Morrison watched the emergency broadcasts from his new command ship, the HSV Defender. The images showed Vorthok warships in orbit around New Austin, firing massive energy beams down at the surface. Cities turned to glass. Forests became ash. Within 6 hours, an entire world was lifeless rock. Sir, called his new communications. Officer, we're getting similar reports from Terra Nova. The colony went silent 20 minutes ago. Jake closed his eyes. Terra Nova had 5 million people, including many children. The Vorthok were not just conquering human worlds. They were erasing them completely. Admiral Patricia Wells stood in the command center on Earth, watching red lights appear on the galactic map as human colonies reported Vorthok attacks. Each red light meant millions of dead. How many ships do we have ready? She asked General Kevin Rodriguez. 67 combat vessels. Rodriguez replied grimly, the shipyards are working around the clock, but we need months to build a real fleet. We have maybe 2 weeks before they reach the inner colonies. Dr. Helen Brooks burst into the command center carrying a data pad. Her face was pale with exhaustion, but her eyes burned with determination. I found something, she announced. The Vorthok energy signatures show a weakness. Their shields operate on a specific frequency that creates harmonics. If we can match that frequency and amplify it, speak plainly, Dr. Admiral Wells said, we might be able to overload their shield generators, Brooks explained. But we'd need to modify our weapons, and we'd have to get very close to their ships. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. A technician called out from his station, Admiral, Vorthok fleet detected at the edge of the Titan system. They're heading straight for our main defensive position. Admiral Wells felt her heart sink. Titan Station was humanity's strongest military base, with 40 of their best ships and most experienced crews. If Titan fell, nothing stood between the aliens and Earth itself. General Rodriguez, take command of the Titan defense, she ordered. I'm going with you. 3 days later, the Battle of Titan Station became the darkest moment in human history. The Vorthok fleet arrived with over 100 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. General Rodriguez commanded the defense from the battleship HSV Courage, while Admiral Wells coordinated the overall strategy from Titan Station itself. Captain Morrison led a squadron of smaller ships, hoping to use their speed to strike at Vorthok weak points. The battle began at dawn. Human ships spread out in defensive formations around the massive space station, their weapons charged and ready. The Vorthok fleet approached slowly, like predators playing with their prey. All ships, fire at will. Rodriguez commanded. Human weapons lit up space with energy beams and missile trails. Some shots struck Vorthok vessels, but their shields absorbed the damage easily. The alien ships didn't even slow down. Then the Vorthok returned fire. The first volley destroyed 12 human ships instantly. The HSV Defender shook violently as Jake Morrison struggled to keep his vessel together. While enemy fire tore through space around him, "Their weapons are too strong," reported his tactical officer. "Our shields can't handle direct hits." Jake watched as the HSV Courage took a devastating blow to its engine section. General Rodriguez's ship began spinning out of control, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. "Rodriguez, report," Jake called over the communications channel. "Ship's dying," came the general's weak reply. "Tell my daughter I'm proud of her." The Courage exploded in a ball of fire and debris. General Rodriguez and his entire crew of 300 people were gone in an instant. On Titan Station, Admiral Wells watched her fleet being systematically destroyed. The Vorthok ships moved through human formations like sharks through schools of small fish, their weapons cutting down ship after ship. "Admiral," called her communications officer, "Captain Morrison is requesting permission to ram the enemy flagship." Wells felt tears on her cheeks. Jake Morrison was one of humanity's best officers, but his ship was badly damaged and would never make it close enough to do significant damage. "Permission denied," she said. "Retreat to Earth. Someone has to warn them what's coming." But it was too late for retreat. Vorthok ships surrounded the remaining human vessels, cutting off all escape routes. Wells realized with horrible clarity that the aliens were not trying to win quickly. They were taking their time, making the battle last longer so they could study human tactics and psychology. A massive explosion rocked Titan Station as enemy fire breached the main reactor. Wells grabbed onto her command chair as the lights flickered, and emergency alarms screamed throughout the facility. "Station structural integrity failing," reported her engineering officer. "We have maybe 10 minutes before total collapse." Wells opened a channel to all remaining human ships. "This is Admiral Wells. I'm ordering all vessels to scatter and run. Get back to Earth and tell them what happened here. Tell them we died fighting." As if responding to her words, a Vorthok energy beam struck the station's command center directly. The last thing Admiral Wells saw was a wall of fire rushing toward her. Meanwhile, in the Vorthok prison ship, Lieutenant Amy Carter had been organizing the other prisoners, using hand signals and whispered conversations. She had made contact with creatures from a dozen different worlds. "Tonight," she told Kath, the blue-furred alien who had become her closest ally, "when they come for the next group of test subjects, we fight back." "Fight with what?" Kath asked sadly. "We have no weapons, no strength left." Amy smiled grimly. "We have something they don't understand. We have hope." That night, when Vorthok guards came to collect prisoners for their experiments, they found empty cages and a coordinated attack waiting for them. Amy had convinced 40 prisoners to work together, using pieces of broken metal and their own bodies as weapons. The surprise assault overwhelmed the guards, and for a brief moment, the prisoners controlled an entire section of the ship. Amy reached a communications console and began transmitting everything she had learned about Vorthok weaknesses and battle tactics. "This is Lieutenant Amy Carter of the HSV Liberty." She broadcast on all human frequencies. "The Vorthok have a critical vulnerability in their shield systems. If you can generate harmonic frequencies at 847.3 terahertz, you can overload their defenses. They also rely heavily on centralized command structures. Target their flagship and the rest of their fleet becomes disorganized." The prison revolt was crushed within an hour. Vorthok reinforcements flooded the area, stunning the prisoners with energy weapons and dragging them back to their cages. Many prisoners died in the fighting, but Amy's message had gotten through. On Earth, Dr. Helen Brooks received Amy's transmission just as reports arrived about the total destruction of Titan Station. The young woman's voice, weak but determined, gave humanity its first real hope in weeks. "She's right," Brooks told the Emergency War Council. "The harmonic frequency data matches my calculations perfectly. And if their command structure is as centralized as she says, we might have a chance." President Daniel Foster looked around the room at the surviving military leaders. With Admiral Wells and General Rodriguez dead, humanity's leadership had been devastated along with their fleet. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked quietly. "Maybe 30 combat-capable vessels," replied the new acting admiral, a young officer named Kevin Rodriguez Jr., the late general's daughter, "plus whatever civilian ships we can arm with weapons. And they're bringing how many to attack Earth?" "Our estimates suggest over 100 warships," Rodriguez answered. "Sir, we can't win a direct battle." President Foster stood up slowly. Through the bunker's reinforced windows, he could see people in the streets above, unaware that their world would soon be under attack by an enemy that had already murdered billions of humans. "Then we don't fight a direct battle," he said finally. "We fight the only way we can. We make them pay for every inch. And we make sure the galaxy remembers what happens when someone tries to exterminate humanity." As if summoned by his words, alerts began flashing on every screen in the bunker. Long-range sensors had detected the Vorthic invasion fleet entering the outer edge of the solar system. War Commander Zeth Kara broadcast his ultimatum to Earth on all human communication channels. His terrifying face filled every screen, his black eyes cold with hate. "Humans," he said in his perfect but emotionless English, "you have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Gather your leaders and await our arrival. Any resistance will result in the complete extermination of your species. You will serve as an example to the galaxy of what happens to those who oppose the Vorthic Dominion." The transmission ended with footage of human prisoners being tortured and killed, including several crew members from the Liberty that Jake Morrison recognized. But something unexpected happened when the ultimatum ended. Instead of panic or despair, a cold fury began spreading through human space. President Foster's response broadcast became known as the moment when humanity stopped being afraid and started getting angry. "To the Vorthic Dominion," Foster said, looking directly into the camera, "humanity's answer is no. We." President Daniel Foster's message spread across human space like fire. Within hours of his defiant broadcast, something remarkable began happening on every human world. Station and ship, people were not running or hiding. They were getting ready to fight. On Mars, factory workers stayed at their jobs for 3 straight days, converting mining equipment into weapons. On Luna Base, children as young as 12 volunteered to help build ammunition. Even the research stations in the outer system began producing military supplies. Instead of conducting their peaceful experiments, Dr. Helen Brooks had not slept since receiving Lieutenant Amy Carter's transmission from the prison ship. She worked in her laboratory with a team of humanity's best engineers, using Amy's intelligence about Vorthic weaknesses to design new weapons. "The harmonic frequency data is perfect," she told Chief Designer Marcus Webb. "If we can modify our energy weapons to match this exact frequency, we can overload their shield generators." Marcus looked at the technical specifications. "This will require completely rebuilding our weapons systems. We have maybe 60 hours before they attack. Then, we work for 60 hours straight," Brooks replied. "Get every engineer in the solar system working on this. I don't care if they collapse from exhaustion. Humanity's survival depends on getting this right." Captain Jake Morrison stood in the shipyard above Earth, watching workers swarm over his new vessel. The HSV Vengeance was one of dozens of ships being built or modified using the new weapon designs. The ship looked different from traditional human vessels, with strange projectors and energy collectors that would generate the harmonic frequencies needed to break Vorthic shields. Captain called his new tactical officer, Lieutenant Ben Harris. "The weapon systems are online, but sir, we've never tested these modifications in actual combat." Jake looked at the young officer. Harris was barely 25 years old, but like everyone else in the fleet, he had volunteered to fight against impossible odds. "Ben, 3 days ago the Vorthic killed Admiral Wells and General Rodriguez. They destroyed entire worlds full of innocent people. They're holding our friends prisoner and torturing them for entertainment." Jake's voice grew harder. "I don't care if our weapons are untested. We're going to make those alien butchers pay for what they've done." On the other side of the solar system, Acting Admiral Nina Rodriguez prepared her own surprise for the Vorthic fleet. Nina was General Rodriguez's daughter, and she had inherited her father's tactical brilliance along with his determination to protect Humanity. Her stealth ship, the HSV Ghost Runner, was equipped with new cloaking technology that made it invisible to Vorthic sensors. Her mission was Suicide Run to rescue Lieutenant Carter and the other prisoners. But Nina had volunteered without hesitation. "Ma'am," said her pilot, Sergeant Tom Mitchell, "we're approaching the Vorthic prison ship. Still no sign they've detected." U.S. Nina studied the massive alien vessel on her screen. Somewhere inside that ship, Amy Carter and dozens of other humans were being tortured by creatures who saw them as nothing more than experimental subjects. "Tom, when we get those people out, I want you to set our engines to overload," Nina ordered. "We're going to ram this ship and take as many Vorthic with us as possible." "Yes, ma'am," Tom replied without question. Like everyone else in the human fleet, he understood that this was a fight for survival. There was no room for half measures or mercy. Back on Earth, the 72-hour deadline was approaching. Vorthic ships had taken positions throughout the outer solar system, surrounding Earth like a pack of wolves preparing to attack their prey. War Commander Ethkara stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human homeworld through his view screen. The planet looked peaceful and vulnerable, with its blue oceans and white clouds. Soon it would be nothing but burning rock, just like all the other worlds that had dared to resist the Vorthic. War Commander reported his tactical officer. "The humans have not responded to our ultimatum. Their ships are gathering near their home world, but their numbers are pathetic. Perhaps 30 vessels against our fleet of 200. Zefkara's black eyes showed satisfaction. "Good. Let them gather their remaining ships in one place. We will destroy them all at once, and the galaxy will see what happens to species that refuse to submit to Vorthic rule." But something was wrong. Zefkara's sensors were detecting strange energy readings from the human ships. Their weapon signatures had changed completely in just 3 days. "Analysis of human modifications," he demanded. "Unknown technology." War Commander, his science officer, replied nervously. "Their energy patterns do not match any weapon systems in our database." Zefkara felt a moment of uncertainty, but pushed it aside. No species had ever successfully resisted the Vorthic military. These humans were probably just making desperate modifications that would fail under actual combat conditions. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "All ships, target the human fleet first, then the planet's major cities. I want this extermination broadcast to every world in known space." The Vorthic fleet moved forward in perfect formation, their massive ships blotting out the stars as they approached Earth. Energy weapons charged to full power, ready to obliterate humanity's last defense. But as the alien ships closed in, the human fleet did something unexpected. Instead of spreading out in defensive formations, they moved closer together, concentrating their fire on specific targets. Captain Morrison spoke to his crew over the ship's communication system. "This is it, people. Everything we've worked for comes down to the next few minutes. Remember Admiral Wells. Remember General Rodriguez. Remember every innocent person these monsters have murdered." He opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships, target the enemy flagship. Fire everything we have." 30 human ships opened fire simultaneously, their modified weapons generating the exact harmonic frequency that Amy Carter had transmitted from the prison ship. The energy beams struck the Vorthic flagship's shields, and something amazing happened. The alien shields flickered and failed completely. War Commander Ethkara stared in disbelief as human weapons tore through his ship's defenses and ripped into the hull. Explosions erupted throughout his vessel as critical systems overloaded and failed. "Impossible," he roared. "How are they penetrating our shields?" But there was no time for answers. More human ships were firing, and each shot was finding its target. Vorthic vessels that had seemed invincible just moments before were now exploding like fireworks. Across the solar system, Jake Morrison watched through his view screen as alien ships died one by one. The new weapons were working perfectly, turning the Vorthic's superior technology against them. "All ships, press the attack," he commanded. "Don't give them time to adapt." On the stealth ship Ghost Runner, Nina Rodriguez had successfully infiltrated the prison vessel and was fighting her way through. Corridors filled with Vorthic guards. She found Amy Carter and the other prisoners in a holding area surrounded by torture devices and alien experiments. Amy, Nina called out as she blasted the lock on Carter's cage with her weapon. Amy looked up weakly, her face marked by days of alien torture. Nina Rodriguez? But how did you find us? Your transmission saved humanity, Nina replied, helping Amy to her feet. Now let's get out of here and finish what you started. But as they reached the ship's escape pods, Amy grabbed Nina's arm. Wait, there's something else. I've been studying their computer systems while I was imprisoned. The Vorthok aren't just conquerors. They're running from something. What do you mean? Nina asked. There's another species out there. Something that scared the Vorthok so badly they became a military empire just to survive. That's why they destroy everyone they meet. They're afraid of being destroyed themselves. Nina looked at Amy with new understanding. So they're bullies who are afraid of getting bullied themselves. Exactly, Amy said. And bullies have one weakness. When someone finally stands up to them, they don't know how to handle it. As if responding to her words, alarms began blaring throughout the Vorthok prison ship. The vessel shook violently as human weapons struck it from outside. The cavalry has arrived, Nina said with a grin. Time to show these aliens what happens when they mess with humanity. They reached the escape pods just as the prison ship's reactor began overloading. Behind them, decades of Vorthok cruelty and arrogance were about to be reduced to burning debris in the cold vacuum of space. War Commander Zefkara's flagship was dying around him. Half his fleet was already destroyed, and the remaining ships were retreating in disorder. The humans had turned his certainty of victory into a crushing defeat in less than an hour. How? He whispered, staring at the tactical display that showed human ships pursuing his retreating fleet. How did these weak creatures do this to us? His tactical officer looked up from his ruined console. War Commander, they used our own shield technology against us. Somehow they discovered the exact frequency needed to overload our defensive systems. Zefkara felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. He felt afraid. These humans had done something no other species had ever accomplished. They had taken the worst the Vorthok could do to them, learned from it, and turned it into a weapon of revenge. As his flagship limped away from Earth's solar system, Zefkara realized with growing horror that he had made a terrible M. The battle for Earth was over in 3 hours. What should have been humanity's final defeat became the complete destruction of the Vorthok invasion fleet. Only 12 alien ships escaped, limping back toward their empire with news that would change the galaxy forever. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the HSV Vengeance, watching the debris field that had once been over 100 enemy warships. His crew was cheering and celebrating, but Jake felt no joy. Too many humans had died to reach this moment. Captain, called Lieutenant Ben Harris, we're receiving a transmission from the surviving Vorthok flagship. Put it on screen, Jake ordered. War Commander Zefkara appeared, his gray-green face marked by cuts and burns from his ship's damage. His black eyes no longer held the cold confidence Jake remembered from their first meeting. Human Captain, Zefkara said, his voice shaking with something that might have been fear. I request terms for surrender. Jake looked at the alien who had ordered the deaths of billions of innocent people. There are no terms. You came here to exterminate my species. Now you run home and tell your empire what happened when you tried. Zefkara's face twisted with confusion. You could destroy my remaining ships easily. Why do you let us go? Because we want every alien in the galaxy to know what happens when someone tries to commit genocide against humanity. Jake replied coldly, run home, War Commander, and pray we never have to come looking for you. The transmission ended, and Jake turned to his communications officer. Send a message to President Foster. Tell him the Earth is safe, but our work is just beginning. Lieutenant Amy Carter had been rushed to a medical facility after her rescue, but she refused to stay in bed, despite her injuries from weeks of alien torture. She insisted on briefing the human leadership about everything she had learned in captivity. The Vorthok have enslaved or destroyed 47 different species. She reported to President Foster and the Emergency War Council. But they're not just conquerors. They're running scared from something else out there. What could scare A species that powerful? Asked Dr. Helen Brooks. Amy pulled up data she had stolen from the prison ship's computers. According to their records, there's another empire called the Devourers somewhere in the galactic core. The Vorthok became a military dictatorship specifically to fight them. But instead of preparing for that war, they've been bullying weaker species and calling it strength. President Foster studied the information, so they're cowards who pick on smaller civilizations because they're afraid to face a real threat. Exactly, Amy confirmed. And sir, there's something else. The prison ships contain survivors from dozens of worlds, species that have been enslaved for decades or centuries. If we could free them, we'd have allies, Foster concluded, people who hate the Vorthok as much as we do. Within days, President Foster authorized Operation Reckoning, the largest military campaign in human history. But this wasn't about conquest or revenge. It was about justice. Captain Nina Rodriguez had survived her rescue mission and now commanded a fleet of 50 ships, equipped with the new anti-Vorthok weapons. Her target was the prison world of Murthok, where Amy Carter had been held, remember. She told her captains over the fleet communication channel, "We're not here to destroy everything like the Vorthok did to our colonies. We're here to free the prisoners and liberate the enslaved populations." The attack on Murthok was swift and decisive. Vorthok orbital defenses, designed to stop conventional weapons, were useless against humanity's harmonic frequency projectors. Within hours, Nina's fleet had destroyed the planet's military installations and landed troops to secure the prison facilities. What they found horrified even the battle-hardened human soldiers. Thousands of creatures from dozens of species were imprisoned in conditions worse than anything humans had imagined. Many had been there so long they had forgotten their own names and cultures. "My name is Commander Nina Rodriguez of the Human Colonial Fleet," she announced to the prisoners over the facility's communication system. "You are free. The Vorthok will never hurt you again." The liberation of Murthok became the turning point in galactic history. News of humanity's victory spread to every enslaved world. In Vorthok space, species that had given up hope of freedom began to rise up against their oppressors. The blue-furred alien Keth, who had befriended Amy Carter in the prison, became the leader of his people's resistance movement, using weapons and tactical knowledge provided by human forces. His species reclaimed their homeworld for the first time in 50 years. The humans kept their promise. Keth said in a broadcast that reached across the galaxy, "They came not as conquerors, but as liberators. They showed us that even the strongest tyrants can be defeated if good people stand together." As human fleets advanced through Vorthok space, they were joined by newly freed species eager to fight alongside their liberators. The Vorthok military, built around fear and intimidation, crumbled when faced with enemies who were no longer afraid. War Commander Zethkara made his final stand on the Vorthok homeworld, but his remaining forces were outnumbered 10-1 by the coalition of liberated species. When human Marines breached his command bunker, he was found alone, abandoned by his own officers. Captain Jake Morrison personally accepted Zethkara as surrender. The alien who had once seemed so terrifying now looked old and broken, defeated not just militarily but spiritually. "I do not understand," Zethkara said as human soldiers placed restraints on him. "We gave you every reason to hate us. We destroyed your worlds, killed your people, tortured your captured. Why do you not simply exterminate us as we planned to do to you?" Jake looked at the fallen war commander with something that might have been pity. "Because we're not you. We don't murder entire species just because we can." "Then what will you do with us?" Zethkara asked. "You'll stand trial for your crimes." Jake replied, "Every species you've wronged will have a voice in deciding your fate, and if you're very lucky, they'll show you more mercy than you showed them." The trial of the Vorthok leadership became the foundation for something new in galactic civilization. Representatives from 47 liberated species gathered on Earth to establish the Galactic Defense Coalition, an alliance dedicated to preventing genocide and protecting weaker civilizations from aggressive empires. Amy Carter, now promoted to captain, was chosen to lead the coalition's rapid response forces. Her first mission was to investigate reports of another species called the Devourers. The mysterious threat that had originally driven the Vorthok to become conquerors. "We're not going out there to start wars," Amy explained to her diverse crew of humans and aliens. "We're going to make sure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else." Dr. Helen Brooks established the Coalition's research division, sharing human technology with allied species while learning from their unique knowledge and capabilities. The harmonic frequency weapons that had defeated the Vorthok were adapted and improved, creating defenses that could protect any member species from aggressive neighbors. President Foster's closing address to the Coalition Assembly became known as the Promise of Earth. 6 months ago, an alien empire came to our world planning to exterminate humanity as an example to the galaxy. He said they believed that strength meant the ability to destroy the innocent. They thought that fear was the ultimate weapon. He paused, looking at the representatives of dozens of species who had suffered under Vorthok rule. They were wrong. Real strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Real power comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. The Vorthok wanted to use our deaths to terrorize the galaxy into submission. Foster's voice grew stronger. Instead, our survival has become a message of hope. Today, we say to every tyrant and bully in the cosmos, if you threaten the innocent, if you prey on the weak, if you believe that might makes right, then you will face the consequences, because humanity and our allies will be watching. The memorial to the Vorthok War was built on the site where Admiral Wells had made her last stand. It listed the names of every being killed during the conflict, human and alien alike. The inscription read simply, "They tried to teach the galaxy that cruelty was strength. Instead, they learned that courage is contagious." Years later, when new species joined the Coalition, they would often ask human representatives why their people had fought so hard for aliens they had never met. The answer was always the same, because when someone tries to destroy innocent people, it doesn't matter what species they belong to. Evil is evil, and good people have a duty to stop it. War Commander Zeth Kara spent his remaining years in a comfortable prison on Earth, writing his memoirs about the fall of the Vorthok Empire. His final entry contained a warning that Coalition leaders would remember for generations. "I underestimated the humans because I thought their kindness made them weak," he wrote. "I was wrong. Their kindness made them strong because it gave them something worth fighting for." The galaxy's bullies and tyrants should beware. Humanity has awakened, and they will never again allow evil to triumph through the silence of good. People, the Vorthok had indeed provoked the wrong species. They had awakened not just humanity's capacity for war, but their determination to build a galaxy where such wars would never again be necessary. In the end,